Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, how are we dimming our lives and how to illuminate our life experience? On my own journey of connecting with myself and with everything else, I find everything to seem richer and clearer and just more fulfilling. The base level pleasures of life just don't seem to satisfy as much. So when this book came across my desk, I was immediately interested. The book is called Undimmed, the 8 awarenesses for freedom from unwanted habits. The author is mother, investor, advocate, and founder Cecily Mak. So Cecily says she is devoted to helping people live dimmer free with clarity, courage, and the freedom to change without stigma or shame. So her story started with realizing she was using alcohol to dim her life. But the focus isn't alcohol. She wasn't really an alcoholic, not a big problem, just realized she was using it to dim herself. And we're really looking at any number of things that we engage with to dim our lives. Think of what you turn to when you have a moment of freedom. Instead of being fully present in the moment and taking in the beauties and the glories and realness of life, you fill it with what? Social media is obviously a common go-to. Immediately pick that screen, a moment of silence or a moment of space, and there's boom, a screen scrolling. Could be a book or a podcast, whether it's entertainment or even self-help, filling the space. Just being productive and getting something done is often what we fill it in with. Buying things, food, entertainment, even exercise can be these constant fillers. Anything and everything other than being fully present and clear and aware. So in this episode, I dig in with Cecily on this topic. We don't even get into the specifics of her 8 awarenesses for freedom from unwanted habits. So before we start, I want to give them to you just to kind of set the stage. Number 1, my life is better, clear. Number 2, I choose what I consume. Number 3, my intuition defines my priorities. Number 4, my trauma isn't my identity. Number 5, forgiveness and letting go are on the path to liberation. 6, I do not judge or impose my orientations upon others. 7, time is our most precious currency. And 8, I seek ways to support others. So again, the book is Undimmed, the 8 awarenesses for freedom from unwanted habits. And there I just gave them to you, but we're going to dig in and really get into these concepts of how we dim our lives and why we dim our lives and what the benefit is of not dimming our lives. You can find Cecily on Instagram at clearlifejourney. So coming up next, my discussion with Cecily Mak and the opportunity in living an undimmed life. Let's evolve ourselves. Cecily, you, of course, have a fairly good focus on sobriety from alcohol. And we'll talk a little bit about that. When this topic and your message came across, what I resonated with was just the concept that I have been really drawn to lately of being sober overall. Not really even thinking about substances, but thinking about sober intellectually, sober emotionally, sober spiritually, anything other than being intoxicated with myself in any way. So that's why you're here, and I'm really eager to talk.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
On that note, I had it's a different type of personality than I would normally have on the show, but Randy Blythe, he's the lead singer of this super heavy metal band, Lamb of God. And he was talking about sobriety because he came out of just really hardcore addiction and whatever to substances for the most part. But he was we got into talking about just his own perspectives on life. And he said, there's a lot of the perspectives that I had in the past that I still align with, but instead of being Captain Anarchy and rebellion and anger, he says, I just I have some grace. I have some understanding.
Mm.
And he was talking about it. And what came to mind is I found him intellectually sober. And so that's where that term came. And as I read your story and your message, that's again, what came to mind is a soberness that far seemed to supersede the substances and the things that we do, and that you have pursued a sober existence overall, again, surpassing substances. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that our choice, our opportunity is to decide whether we want to be in this life very clear, very present, or a little bit dimmed, dulled, or very checked out. And the people who are drawn to this topic have one way, shape, or another decided at some point that they'd rather be clear. In fact, I use that word clear or clarity or present more than sober because I found the word sober to be charged and weighted and kind of heavy, honestly. It comes with a lot of judgment and association. But your point is a real one that we're in this era, maybe era of humanity. Let's see what happens, where it feels super important to be paying attention. How we communicate, who we spend time with, what do we do with our discretionary time? What do we lean into in making decisions? Is it external influences, internal influences? It's defining not only our individual future, but our collective advancement. And so it feels maybe more high stakes than ever. And I love your reference to this kind of universal sense of, you use the word sobriety or clarity, that many of us are being called into.
Okay. I'm curious then, what do you feel? How do you track with the idea of, because if I want to be, quote, sober or clear, it's because I'm really finding caution with what am I intoxicated with? What is Kevin intoxicated with? What am I coming to you if we're having a conversation?
Yeah.
What am I intoxicated with? Which in a sense is clouded with, but I almost think of it as a need. Like, do I have a need from you that I am intoxicated with that's flavoring everything that I do? And I felt like a lot of your messaging was this feeling of stepping back and being aware.
Yeah.
Fair?
Beautiful. I mean, and that's why I've used the word awarenesses instead of, steps or mandates, because
I like the term. It's a good point.
It comes from, it's softer, it's more subtle. It's something that is telling us that maybe this thing that we're doing or consuming is standing between us and a more authentic way of being. And most of us have something that we're doing as a self-soothing or self-medicating or an edge softener. And, in my case, for years, it was alcohol. I have other dimmers these days, such as social media or perfectionism, or I've used the term toxic generosity, where I do something, a favor or something nice for somebody in my close circle, just for the quick dopamine hit of relief from something else going on. And so I think it can really be, there are healthy ways that we can relate to dimmers. There are healthy ways that we can kind of disconnect. But when we get into this space where it's such a pattern and it's something we're relying on, we're losing touch with something really important, which is our own kind of truer self, our own gut, our own intuition, whatever you want to call it, that I think is maybe one of the most precious things we have. And so if we have an inkling that something's standing between us and that place, a lot of us come to this moment, which is, how would life be if I didn't have this thing? Or am I developing a dependency on something that's maybe not serving me? I think those are the questions that we can gently ask ourselves from a place of curiosity and awareness, not necessarily trying to determine a diagnosis or a stigma or a hard black and white line.
Okay. When you talk about dimmers, whether it's a substance, whether it's a behavior, even the thing of, I think I've had a lifetime of using exercise for that, which everybody applauds. It's great. You're killing it out there, but I'm intoxicated, to use that term again. And as I look at it, as much as, well, Cecily, I think what's kept me from, quote, the addiction and really going downhill is because of my responsibilities in life, for one. And two, I don't really like to be out of control. Mm-hmm. But I think there's always a vice. There's always something that I am self-soothing with. And I see that propensity in me. And I feel like, well, you tell me as you look at the culture, that even when we notice one that may seem like, quote, harmful, like let's take alcohol. It's okay, I don't drink anymore. Well, isn't the joke that I've heard lately? I had a friend here and he says, well, yeah, I'm sober 20 years, but it's California sober.
Yeah, sure.
Was the term.
Smoking pot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And I had not heard that. And I thought, well, yeah, am I like athletic sober? So I'm not doing that, but I'm over here, doing an ultra marathon every day. What I'm replacing it as opposed to, is that what you say? Just clear. That's your word.
Yeah. And, I think that exploration is so important. A lot of us are using super healthy things in unhealthy ways. And a lot of us are using unhealthy things in healthy ways. I think it's less about the thing or even necessarily how much we're doing or consuming the thing. What I like to do is go kind of one layer deeper and examine the why. What is it that's making us go for that thing or reach for it or watch it or drink it? If you're once a year reuniting with old university mates and you go to your favorite restaurant and you get to have a 4-hour dinner and you open a bottle of wine from the year you all graduated together, fantastic. Yes, alcohol is a carcinogen and we've this whole story around how it's really not as healthy as we hoped and thought all these years. But still, that kind of in community, in a social setting, with friends, occasional celebratory drinking, I think is awesome. I think it's great. Now, on the other hand, somebody who maybe is a runner and compulsively runs 8 or 10 miles a day because they're so wrecked inside over a crumbling relationship. And the only way that they know how to dim out or dull out that pain on a daily basis is to push themselves to that physical limit of exhaustion to relieve themselves. That's probably not healthy. So I love to look at the gray areas and the kind of basis for things. Another super easy one is social media. A lot of us use social media for our businesses. It's a great way to communicate and share and reach audiences and have impact. But it can also be really dangerous if we're using it in some way that is, frankly, self-medicating or escapist. And it doesn't take a scientist to figure out that after a few hours of scrolling through Instagram or some other feed, maybe even news these days, we don't feel great. It's not healthy for us. So I think it's more the why. And that's how I try to govern with these things in my own life. I don't drink anymore by choice. I don't self-define as sober. I just make the choice every day to not drink. And I'm 8 years into that journey and it works well for me. But there's all kinds of other stuff I go to. And when I notice myself, a big one in the last quarter has been compulsively working. If there's something unpleasant happening with a family, I can open up my inbox and just be totally checked out for an hour. I'm doing something more important than all of that. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to feel the feelings. That's an active dimmer, which can be just as dangerous as a drinking habit, frankly.
That word compulsive. Yeah, I don't like that word. I don't want to be that word. And yet, if you audited everyone who knows me throughout my lifetime, probably would get associated with the word. I don't know though, because if it's the healthy thing you're doing unhealthily, it's hard.
Can still be compulsive.
I would. So I'm saying, I think I am. I don't know if people would say that, but I think I have been. And even that aspect of, compulsive, like having to exercise. I had, Nicholas Thompson on the show recently, the CEO of the Atlantic, and
Yeah.
he just wrote his book on running. I forgot the name of the title of the book, but we didn't get into that, but afterwards, I think because he was talking about there's lots of emotional pain with his father and all these things, and I was thinking of myself, and I think I compulsively suffered. I want to go out and physically suffer. And then I was talking with another friend I would say she's a compulsive runner. She kind of admitted to that. And I said, I wonder if we've done that as a way to medicate our inability to process emotional pain. So we go out and suffer, and that's the equilibrium. And now, as I have gone through some very similar life circumstances as you have talked about in your book, and I've gone through and kind of broken a lot of things down and find myself at a place of more clarity. I realize I'm not as compelled to go suffer. I just hadn't made the correlation.
Beautiful.
But then let's take it to everything. Where else am I medicating and it is not productive, constructive? I mean, that's at the end of the day, we're looking for that measurement, right?
Yes, and not only in the loss of the productivity or the constructive use of time, but what are we missing out on when we are self-soothing with something? And it's going to be a different answer for every one of us. And this is often the hardest part of going through any kind of an undimming or tackling our dimmer's journey, is we have to face the music on what we were wanting to not feel. And then also what we missed out on along the way. So I have a couple major points of shame in this. One more surface, one a little deeper. The surface one is I can remember when my kids were pretty young, like 3 and 7, when we still had a nightly bedtime story routine. You know, come home from work, we have dinners, bath time, jammies, and then it's books in bed. And I would have a glass of wine on the kitchen counter, one with my then husband, and I would, be the one reading the story that night. And I would be kind of hurried to get through the book and back to the wine and the time with my then husband. Now, this is not necessarily a deadly offense. I'm sure many parents can relate to those moments.
Yeah, you're a rock star because you read a book to your kid, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like,
Sure.
There are much worse things. However, my recollection of consciously, skipping pages, like turning 2 pages at a time, trying to make it go faster, and really just kind of like bulldozering over moments that are very special life moments, doesn't feel good to look back on. I wasn't getting drunk those nights. I was never somebody who had a blackout or a DUI or rock bottom or had to go into recovery. I did just make a choice to stop drinking, but I had this kind of sinister, yucky habit that was affecting how I was spending my minutes and my hours and my days in ways that I wasn't really conscious of at the time. Now, the second tougher one, what I missed out on, and I hear this a lot from people, and it's the entire third awareness in the book, if people are going to read the book. It's around intuition and our gut and our access to this inner guidance, which I know you are familiar with. We have an inner knowing in us that tells us right from wrong, safe, not safe, go, don't go, do, don't do. And oftentimes we're in a situation, usually, or often a big life situation. It might be a career or a relationship or a home or a community or some obligation of some kind, where it just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't fit with our values or our way of being, our character. And it's those situations where I think a lot of us use dimmers to kind of get through that icky discomfort. And it might be, you always smoke a joint right before you meet this certain type of friend, or you cannot tolerate this quarterly dinner party without at least a couple glasses of wine. That's really valuable signal. And when we take away the dimming habit, then we have all of this sensation that is such wise, brilliant guidance for us, and talk about being a peak performer, like fully showing up, being a fantastic family member, partner, whatever it might be. when we can actually really tune into ourselves and make decisions with more confidence and clarity, we're next leveling ourselves. We are really leveraging something that we have that makes us special and will help shape our life in a way that we actually want to live.
I have about 3 topics right in what you said that it's probably a show each. This is gonna be a 10-part series.
I love it. Let's have fun.
Well, the inner knowing, yeah, your intuition. I just did a show, on a book about intuition and realizing speaking of substances, one of the things that has kept me again from because talk about alcohol. Wine is a glorious thing to me. I have a relationship with wine, but my work is creative. My joy is creating and around that, discernment and insight and those things like the inner knowing, intuition. Man, if I'm inebriated, I just don't have it. If I wake up the next morning real fuzzy, I cannot get those juices flowing. It's my livelihood and my joy. If it wasn't and I had something that didn't require much of me, I would be much more apt, I think, to fall to that. But so it speaks to me when you say that. And if I'm going to look at intuition, which feels like one of the greatest missing, we've lost the art or even the belief in intuition these days. I think, well, you tell me, because my perspective is we're not in touch with ourselves, one, and two, feels like we're in a culture that wants to rely on fact and proof and whatnot. And it's not as upheld to say, well, just going with my gut, really.
Yeah. I mean, we live amidst structures that reward certain things and not others. And productivity, accountability, powering through, overcoming fatigue, being able to tolerate difficult people and situations. These are the values that are celebrated. And we are so rarely seeing examples being celebrated of people saying, I'm actually not going to do that interview today because I don't feel well. Or I decided I'm actually not going to accept that promotion because I like the way that my lifestyle fits with my professional responsibilities right now, given the ages of my kids, or this nonprofit work I'm doing, or this health goal that I'm pursuing that takes time. We don't have room to create space for less activity because it's really kind of discouraged and not allowed so much in our culture. I have a super intense example experience of that. In 2022, I was the COO of a $3 billion crypto infrastructure company that I'd helped build from a struggling team of 11 2 years prior. And I knew about a year and a half into that 2+ year role that I needed to step out. I was ignoring appointments. I was not really showing up for my kids. I wasn't adhering to basic health regimens. And so I talked to the CEO founder with whom I worked very closely, and it took us about 9 months to help me phase out and build a team and set it up for the next wave of success. And it was tough because I had a lot of people try to talk me out of this. I was really, running upstream on this. There were colleagues that I'd worked with in years prior. What the hell are you doing, Cecily? Hang on for the IPO. Or my peers who I'd helped hire and onboard as executives. What do you mean you're leaving me? I came to this company in part to work with you. Or a parent who just thought I had lost my mind, that I was going to leave this great, lucrative, fantastic job. But I had such clear connection to my intuitive sense on this one. I knew in my gut that it was time to go. And the affirmation came 6 days later, after my last big company-wide email as the COO. I got a breast cancer diagnosis. And at that moment, I remember the next morning I looked in the mirror and I didn't feel fear. I felt relief. Now nobody can try to talk me out of what my intuition is telling me is right for me. And I took all of 2023 to just regroup, reassess, reprioritize, finish and start getting this book going, invest time and energy into our fund, I completely reorganized my priorities, which is a process that had started a year prior. And I am certain that if I was still drinking even a glass or two of wine a night in that period, I would have just ignored and overridden all of that wise kind of signal. So this stuff's real.
Well, I concern myself a lot with the pressures of the culture that we see, just like you talk about there. It feels like, as you shared, one of the greatest struggles, difficulties, challenges with you stopping just alcohol, as an example, was the social pushback.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that in regards to even this being clear, being sober, being unencumbered. You said the word reward a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
We did a show recently and talked about being cynical. And it seems like that's kind of in vogue. To be cynical that's intellectual. And if you're not, if you're like optimistic, I did a show yesterday on optimism. If you're optimistic, that's kind of naive.
Kind of soft.
Okay. So let's go there with this.
Yeah.
So to not have, let's go back to that word you used, compulsion. To have something that you're compelled with, that you're addicted to, that you're whatever. I'm concerned with seeing that maybe that's kind of cool. That's kind of in vogue. You mean to not have anything seems almost, you said soft, almost kind of boring, and maybe again, kind of naive. And honestly, to me, as I read your book and I saw some testimony to you, I'm going to say on a spiritual bent, that's about the only place that I see it, that I read about being clear, being unencumbered, is in a spiritual context. Outside of that, it doesn't seem to be, culturally at least, rewarded.
So that's going to change. It's actually starting to change in some pretty profound circles already.
Tell me.
Have you come across Diana Chapman's work? Conscious Leadership, Drama Triangle?
That sounds familiar, but no.
Okay. You should consider her. Look her up, or I'll send you some information about her. She's a really remarkable leader and coach to high power executives and founders in the Silicon Valley and tech space. And we had time with her recently, and we were talking about AI and the impact that AI is having on us all, and what's our world going to look like in 3 to 5 years. She used this term spiritual rank. And I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, what an oxymoron, right? But she was explaining that our culture has to date been really built upon these pillars of productivity and efficiency and intellectualism, how much knowledge we have, how we can leverage that expertise and knowledge. And AI is leveling the playing field on that. All of humanity, billions of humans are on the planet, are going to be, at least have available to them, very similar footing, intellectually, skills-wise, efficiency-wise. It's taking away this hierarchy that we have functioned so remarkably with for, at least 100 years in Western culture. And instead, what is starting to be more important is what technology cannot replace. It's that, do we have something innate in us that makes us uniquely human that we can use to advance our lives, careers, relationships, connection, purpose, whatever it might be? And I really think that, in my own kind of practice and journey, going from lawyer and COO and now running a fund and being an author of this book, my values have also shifted in what makes me look up to somebody. And I'm seeing it happen in circles around me. If I meet somebody at an event and they are standing in a place of calm presence, they make steady eye contact when we meet, I get a firm handshake, and we immediately transition within a moment or two to a real topic of discussion, that is so real and so attractive. I want to know more about that person. What do you do? What are you building? How can I support you? How did you learn what you've learned to become this human that you are standing before me today? Whereas maybe 5 or 10 years ago, I would be looking at what they're wearing, who they're with, how articulate they are with their words, and I would not pay attention to things like that steadiness, that eye contact, that immediate sense of depth that today is more important. And so I think we are. More of us are looking for that type of real human connection. Having a lot of knowledge or a lot of things or a materialistic life is just far less appealing than it has been historically because it's just more easily accessible. It's not actually how we can determine relatability and value anymore, especially in the world of social media, where so much of what we're ingesting about other people is, if not possibly fake, likely fake. So the human piece becomes really important. And that's how somebody who went from, tech exec to doing this work, it all feels very intimately connected. For years, I kept all of these practices and awarenesses very much kind of private, secretly on my belt. Like, I worked closely with very powerful men in Silicon Valley, and they would want me to take a walk with them, and we would go sit on a bench and they would cry. And I had available in me tools to support them through something very challenging as a human being trying to lead an organization. I never revealed, hey, I go on meditation retreats and I have these, certain like lifestyle things that I do that help me stay centered and grounded. But those things are less and less weird these days. And they're super important in professional and personal life contexts.
Well, you talking about AI, I am devoting myself to an endeavor. And one of the lines, or not the lines, the concepts that we're playing with right now is as everything, technology seems to be evolving. AI is evolving. Feeling like over here though, but I don't know that we have. Are we evolving psychologically and spiritually? And how can we give focus to that? And you talking, I love your analogy of somebody in the room. Here's what I related it to is as I feel like the first time have finally started really connecting with myself. I feel that, it's like a beacon when I find other people and you can sense it. And I tend to go to the thought of they're secure. They're just secure. They're okay with them. They're not needy. They may be desiring. And so to look in their eyes like you and I are now and go, man, we desire this conversation. It's great. What's the need? I don't, that's going to dilute it. The need will lessen it if there's a need. And to security again, to it feels like a lost art again, that we have normalized and even maybe rewarded that we're an insecure people and we medicate, and that's kind of cool. And I look at it's not, is it working? Do we need more books on happiness because we're so unhappy? It's obviously not working. So where's the shift? And so coming back to the focus of your book, I felt that over and over of Cecily connected with Cecily. That was the greatest thing that happened. And speak to that with your kids. So I've got lots of kids. And as I have connected with me, I do less and I feel like I just be with them more. And I have kind of dumbfounded watching the connection with them increase. Their trust in me. I continue to have kids say, Dad, I just feel safe with you. It's great. Beautiful. Although I'm wondering, did you not before? But I think it was not connected.
Yeah.
And I saw you relating to that a lot. Okay. To what you mentioned, what are we missing out on? We've got to tune in with ourselves to know that though. Cause I think for some, if I'm going to give up these, quote addictions or these self-soothing things, what else is there?
Yeah.
This is what gives my life spice. How do you address that with folks?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best way to gain some awareness or understanding of this is actually to give it a shot. Like, I was never in my prior years, my prior life, terribly aware of what I was missing or how disconnected I was. I was providing. I had a great job. Kids were happy. They were going to school, had their friends. We hosted birthday parties. There was the occasional vacation. And it was about 5 months into my alcohol-free experiment, which started with just a 30-day, let's see what life feels like without this thing. I woke up one day. I remember this so vividly. It's like a picture in my mind. I remember looking down at the kitchen floor in my cottage where we lived at the time and seeing my bare feet. And I had a cup of coffee in my hand. And I had this moment and I said to myself, I hope I can swear on your show, oh shit, the kids. And I put the cup of coffee down and I went into my son's little room where they were both sleeping. And I just sat there and waited until they woke up. And as I was sitting there, I was realizing, thinking about, I knew where they were going. I knew their schedules. I knew whether their clothes were dirty or clean and their lunchbox was full or empty and if they had a sniffle or not. But I had no idea how they were doing.
You said connected. I read that part and I pulled out, you said I wasn't connected. And then you also said you weren't attuned to them.
No.
Didn't feel attuned. Yeah.
And it shattered me because I felt like a fraud. And I felt like I had just been kind of going through the motions of being a parent and not actually, thank you for the reminder of that word, attuning to them, which is such a way to love somebody. You notice the little things. What kind of art are they making? Did they eat their breakfast? Did they make eye contact when they walked out of school that day? Was it hard for them to get out of bed? Or did they get up with good energy? Like these little things that when kids get to be in those ages of 4 or 5 to 12, 15, they're not necessarily telling us what's going on with their words, but they're telling us with everything else about them. And our opportunity is to connect and listen and tune in. And that day, it really was like a shift day for me. I decided that I would kind of reorganize things to be able to be more present with them. Not be looking at my phone when I pick them up at school. I would not have a meeting between 3:30 and 3:45. So when they walked in the door, I wasn't on a Zoom. We could actually have a moment and have a conversation and set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. And these little tiny micro adjustments, they're not heroic, not asking for a medal, but it's like they shifted the way we related. And so then I started noticing them coming to me with things that maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable coming to me about before. Mom, this kid put this sentence in our group chat tonight that makes me wonder if he's safe. Or I have to give this presentation tomorrow in English class and I'm scared. Or later, Mom, we're cool with you and Dad divorcing and thanks for both being great parents, but it's really hard moving every week. Like beautiful shares that opened up this ability to deepen and nurture a relationship that would have never actually been able to exist, not to mention thrive. They're 14 and 18 now. And the questions are bigger. Girlfriend stuff and finances and health scares. And, my older one told me recently he called me his second choice to Chat GPT, and it was like the biggest compliment of my year. Like I'm the first human he calls with a problem. And I'll take it, man. I wouldn't give that up for the world. And if I was checked out as I was for a long time, I think I would have missed it.
Cecily, as we talk about connection, I initially was looking or noticing, I think, that as I connected with me, you're talking about your kids, that I connected, I'll just focus on them, that I felt more connected with them and felt testimony of their increased connection with me. But then the next level that I am increasingly sensing, not only with them, but even with friends, is that the more I am connected with me, let's go back to the person who seems secure with them, the more I am, it seems to foster the same thing within them. So it's not just that we're connecting. I think I'm watching them by proxy, by example, by energy and aura, whatever, connecting with themselves, even with friends, and they're testifying to that to me. Have you experienced such thing?
My guess is you're modeling permission to be real. You're modeling permission to be authentic. You're showing them that you're not always going to be 100% on your game. You're showing them that you have certain preferences and aversions, and you feel safe telling them, hey man, that doesn't work for me anymore, or I don't feel like attending this thing today, or we're going to change our schedule because blah, blah, whatever it is. And when we do that in front of our kids in these years of development, I think they realize that they can do it too. And they don't have to self-abandon in their day-to-day lives. They can actually honor their own preferences and aversions, and they can speak to them with their loved ones. And yeah, sometimes, sorry, you got to get off your butt and get to practice. But sometimes, oh, you're having a hard day today? I hear you. I see you. Would it help you if we, took a pause and went to solve this problem together? So I think that that's really, and it's one of those things. It might be unique with kids. I've seen it a little bit in a professional context when I have really honored myself and done it in a visible way. It gives other people permission to honor themselves too. I had one of my favorite examples was an offsite, a global international offsite landed on my son's 10th birthday one year. And I replied all to the whole leadership team. I said, hey guys, sorry, I'm not going to make it. I don't miss birthdays anymore. And the ripple effect of that was enormous because people realized they then had permission to have some of their own boundaries and be truthful with their managers. They didn't have to say, I have a medical appointment. They could say, it's my kiddo's 4th birthday party at school today, and I'm going to log off at 2 so I can make it. It gave everybody permission to be true. And that happens when we connect more with ourselves. When we align and get really familiar with our own priorities and develop a bit deeper courage to live by them and our own values, it touches every part of our lives. And that can start with conquering a habit, right? It's like you decide you're going to pause doing something, you realize, oh, there's a bunch of other stuff in my life that I can pause as well or try and maybe fail. And I'm not a bad person. It's great.
Let's go right there. You used a word in your book. I took a picture of it to send to my colleagues because, again, this significant devotion of mine is really around agency. Personal agency, though we're striving to redefine it a little bit, because you can look at personal agency as, okay, I believe I have the ability to influence my situation, my circumstances. And I kind of paraphrase it as, I pull myself up by the bootstraps and make stuff happen. The agency I interest myself in, I'm going to call internal or inner agency. And my flag for that is Viktor Frankl, as he's in a concentration camp and he has agency externally over nothing. And he has it inside. So for lack of better terms, maybe you have one. And if so, great, it'll help my work. I'm thinking, okay, agency is retaining my power. It's mine. I'm not giving it away. I'm not giving it away to something that I'm a victim of. I'm not giving it away to a substance. And I don't like the word control, but again, for lack of better term, to go, who we seem to be in a culture, again, I'm going to look at that I have been a part of giving our control away to everything. And we're screaming about it on the headlines and in the social media and in our own lives and in conflict. And we're now isolated and we're not happy again. Yeah. And coming back and going, oh my gosh, I don't want, that's why I adore the concept that Viktor Frankl gave is you can't take away me. You can't take away my agency. Because again, if I don't have it, even if it's ludicrous, even if I feel like I've been victimized, but still, if I give my, again, power control away, why would I do that? Yeah. Why would it feels like a consistent thread through your entire message. Yeah. It's such an important piece of this. And you frame it really beautifully. And you're reminding me of a sister word I often put right next to agency that helps with this, which is reclaim. We actually reclaim our agency at a certain point. When we're kiddos, we're pretty free to say and do and express what we want.
It's the conditioning of our upbringing and our family and our community and our culture that sort of shapes and defines us in ways as we evolve and age. And before we know it, we're doing a whole bunch of things because we think we're supposed to, or there's an expectation or a mandate. And these are all these external things that we then let penetrate ourselves. And before we know it, many of us are waking up and wondering, how did I get here? How did I get into this relationship? How did I get into this job? How did I get into this stressful or difficult or unhealthy life situation somewhat passively? And that's what sparks a lot of shift for people, midlife. It's a thing. That is a real sense of kind of revisiting, reassessing where we are and how we get there, and reclaiming agency is such a critical part of that. Now, this had to be a kind of a core foundation layer of all of my work in this space, because in my years of growing up with a lot of addiction and pain and trauma around me, I was taught that there are two flavors of relationship with alcohol. One is you drink a little bit and you're fine. Drink responsibly. We're good. No big deal. But then there's this other group of people over there who have a problem. They're the ones who need to stop and they need help and professional intervention and rehab and AA and all of it. And so in order for me at my spot in my journey 8 years ago to reframe my relationship with this dimmer, there was a message, like a cultural standard, that I had to first say, I have a diagnosis, I have a problem, and I am forever for the rest of my life in this camp over here. My mother refused to do that. She ultimately passed away from her own illnesses years ago. And I just couldn't subscribe to that. I still had this sense that I'm actually a really strong-willed, clear-headed person. Like, if I'm doing something I don't really want to do anymore, why don't I change that behavior? That's agency. That is choice. That is freedom. That's me deciding from the inside out what I'm going to shift in my life to make it a better, healthier, more aligned with what's important to me life. And so agency that's like a foundational building block of really any type of getting to know ourselves, any type of positive shift in behavior, any type of deepening relationship is getting out to, I love you use the word victim orientation. Instead of this is happening to me, just make it, this is happening. Like I'm going to respond, again, referencing the beautiful example of Viktor Frankl. Like we can only control what's happening inside of ourselves. For most of us, our suffering is our reaction to the circumstances, not the circumstances themselves. And so when we can reclaim agency, we bring that power back inside of us. That is incredible potential for transformation. And then the ripple effect of that in every area of our life and in every relationship.
The word you used, cultural standard. I continue to come back to that. And you spoke to it a lot in your book. You had a lot of stories, and I become aware of what a bubble I live in. I'm up in a small town in the Rocky Mountains, and my friend, I kind of got my own blue zone going here. And so
nice.
these concepts are very well taken, but you shared being in big corporate world, and even amongst your family and whatnot, the cultural standards and the pressures that came from, you said expectations, and I wrote down shoulds. And I think I find myself through your message wanting to pull those out and go, those are those are maybe the greatest enemies that left alone. I think a lot of us would, well, do you agree? Do you align with this? That a lot of us would choose healthier options, but the pressure, we underestimate the pressure of the culture to go and say, no, I'm not going to drink. And I was thinking as you were talking about, I would assume that there's, you get some crap from people if you don't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
I really wanted to be so cool that I got a flip phone.
Yeah.
I have an addiction apparently to Spotify, just to give up my music. It's the one.
Yeah.
Give me a phone that just does the phone stuff and Spotify. But point being, I bet again, something there that, you talked about social media, that get off that is, I think people would even say, that's a pain. I can't connect with you there.
Yeah.
Why does it seem to inhibit others? Or is it because it threatens them?
It's a great question. Different people have different feelings and experiences with this. The social pressures of doing something along with everybody else are real. And that's probably the one thing I'm asked the most about in the whole undeming world by people who hunt me down and want to have a one-to-one conversation. They're asking about a couple things, and usually the most prevalent is, but how do I keep doing life in the way I've been doing it without this thing? And you're referencing our phone. For many cases, it's their drinking habit. For many, it might be getting stoned with their buddies. Like, I don't know, there's a whole spectrum of things we could be doing that fit into this social framework. And when we ourselves step away from that piece of the puzzle, it causes disruption. It makes people uncomfortable. And there are a few things I learned along the way here. One is, I think we often think we make other people more uncomfortable than they actually are. It's a pretty fleeting moment of them being annoyed that we're not with them in doing the thing. And it's usually a very small number or percentage of the total number of people we're interacting with. People don't care as much as we think they care about what we're doing. Honestly, it's a bit of an egoic conversation we get in. Second, there's a path to using the absence of this thing to discovering new people, new contexts, new things. I used to spend every Friday night in the same awesome dive bar in San Francisco with the same rotation of DJs for years. It was great. It was super fun. It was a way to kind of end the week in the middle of my commute, come home. And I now haven't done that for 8 years, but boy, have I been to a hell of a lot early morning farmers markets. I've probably run 1,000 miles before 8 a.m. And I've nurtured relationships with people who aren't at the bar until 1 in the morning. And it's a bit of a trade-off. And so I think, it's important to look at it that way. I'll also add, I had somebody ask me yesterday about, isn't this the uncomfortable person's problem if they have an issue with us not doing something with them? Doesn't that say more about them than it says about us?
Fair.
That's a super fair question. And
Yeah.
I don't like to reside in that place too much because it's right on the edge of being judgmental and assuming things about others that maybe isn't fair to assume. But it is true that certain people are going to be really put off by certain choices that we make.
It is funny, isn't it? Why?
Yeah.
Like, why would somebody care that I don't drink or that I don't eat meat? I did the vegan thing for a long time, and talk about a pain in the butt. But but why would somebody care? Actually, as you're talking, I had the solution. You ready?
Awesome. Let's go.
You just lie. You just lie.
Just lie. That's a fair one.
Because we're I have a functional medicine background, and people are, there's allergies. I'm allergic to that. Can't do gluten. I can't do nightshades. Can't do that. So I'm just going to do that. Oh, you're not drinking? Yeah. I started getting this really nasty rash that's really contagious as well.
Whatever you need to do.
But dude, you don't want me to, because you'll get it. So I'm going to lie. Okay,
that's a good one.
I want to ask you about, it was one of those revelatory things as I was reading your book. Chapter 1, my life is better clear under the dimmers. And you said, well, you kind of have a list, and I just put it as, substances. But then you said people pleasing. Holy crap. So I did a show recently on, the book is Fawning by Dr. Ingrid Clayton.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
The amount of dimness that I inflicted on myself and in everyone by fawning and people pleasing, appeasing, that I actually spent most of my life as a good Christian boy feeling righteous about that. Like I'm valiant in the fact that I just take whatever. I don't respond direct. I can handle it. No limits, no expectations,
Martyrdom.
whatever. Yeah. And I did it until I realized one day, kind of like you realizing with your kids, like, oh, my kids, I realized I'm bitter.
Mm-hmm.
That has no place in my life. What the hell is going on? And so fawning, I love that as you bringing that out as a way that we dim ourselves is,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's a tough one to undo. I mean, it's, we talked about alcohol a moment ago and how unpleasant it is for some people in our lives when we don't join them with a beverage. But when we have been in a fawning or a people pleasing mode with somebody, and then we decide that we're going to stop that because we want to be more authentic or true or real with ourselves, or we've noticed that this is a pattern that's not helpful, it can really rock the boat. That is a dramatic shift in a relationship for a lot of people. And we have to really kind of like stick to it.
Well, I'm coming up to a year past a divorce. And boy, I will just own it was I perceived we both did it. We both did it. We were both professional fawners who came together to try to support each other. And I feel regret to everybody, but especially my kids, that I did that, and such gratitude to be coming out of it and be, again, I do still like the word sober, at least for myself, and to be
for sure
sober out of that. And you mentioned, you didn't use the word, but I was hearing boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Not fawning has helped me most have those boundaries. And again, I feel like it's what we talked about with the kids, that it just gives everybody permission. Like you talked about, I feel a little awestruck. Like I'm sitting back watching things happen and everything's in slow motion. I go, really? This is magic. I think it's magic.
Yeah. It's, and you know what else is magic is what you're modeling for your kids is gold. How many of us grow up, make our way through adolescence, high school, and launch into the world and believe that we're supposed to do all of these things and behave in these certain ways and don't even really know what we care about anymore because we have been conditioned by our home base into certain tendencies, habits, and behaviors. And the fact that you're saying, here's a boundary, I'm not doing this behavior anymore. I'm not proud of what I did 3 years ago. I own that. I am not to, hold all of the victory or blame in the end of this marriage. Your kids are picking up on all of that. That's just, our kids are picking up on all of that. They're seeing us behave in a way that gives them permission to be true to themselves. And, we often crack jokes in our family, like, what are our kids going to be in therapy for in 20 years? Like, what are the things that they're going to be trying to unpack about their childhoods that I can maybe try to correct now while they're still in the nest? And that's not one of them in our family. Like, we publicly own our, again, pardon my French, fuck ups regularly. I actually last night in front of my fiance and my 14-year-old, I said, hey, I want 10 since my son. I said, I want you to watch this. Hey, Soren, I made a mistake yesterday. I was wrong about that thing. I'm sorry that I was so adamant about it. I was just trying to control the situation. You were right. I got a little mini applause out of them because I'm such a stubborn pain in the butt and I'm so convincing with everything that I do in the family and the household. And it's like, if we could just grab those moments, they go so fast, but then the kids see it and they're like, I can do that too. That's actually healthy. Maybe if I screw up, I don't have to hide it or feel shame or, like wither away from that relationship. I can actually just step forward and own it. And there might be more love. So I love it that you're doing this with your kids. Aren't they lucky?
I feel like it's, again, using that word, the sobriety, it just spreads and it helps everybody to be as well. Thank you for this book. Thanks for letting me be a student, one, and so honored to be an evangelist for it. This is what I will be discussing tonight with my children at the dinner table. Before we watch our annual Lord of the Rings and go into that marathon. So
Love
you
it.
get to be the preface to
Wow.
a great night of sobriety.
Thank you. I have a little chill go up my back. That is the greatest compliment I've had in a very long time. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the time. Thanks for what you're doing, Cecily.
Yeah, absolutely. See you again.
Thanks for joining us in the discussion. That again is Cecily Mak. The book again is, well, it's right beside me here. If you're looking at the video, Undimmed, the 8 awarenesses for freedom from unwanted habits. And you can find her on Instagram at clearlifejourney. Till next time, here's to the evolving us.
Yeah.